This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Good morning, Dan and Amy. You thought BuzzFeed was engaged in some shoddy reporting, leading many to rush to judgment about the end of the Trump presidency.
Yeah, Eric Holder was calling for his impeachment on Friday.
Well, sure. The story was that Michael Cohen was going to confirm that President Trump's suborn perjury directed him to lie to Congress. And then came the statement, the rare statement, that's not produced in the form of a court filing from the special counsel's office saying what BuzzFeed reported is not accurate. BuzzFeed standing by the story. Of course they would, because what are the consequences to doing so?
Well, they said that, after Robert Mueller's office released that statement, they confirmed with their source again that it will come out when he testifies February 7th.
So you think that's
Sure.
you think that's an instance where we've moved into, if you want it to be true, it is true in terms of the standard for DC reporting. Lila Rose, live action. March for Life. Hundreds of thousands took us full hour to march to the Supreme Court. Many said that it was their largest yet. I'm at the Women's March now, this is the PHAT March, for counter rally with Independent Women's Forum. Whole Women's March fits into Freedom Plaza, maybe 20,000. Looks like the smallest yet. Life is winning.
Well, the one they had here in Chicago, 22 people were there.
But
nobody knew why they were there. Because some people were talking about the government shutdown. Other people were talking about the wall. Other people were, one woman was talking about her great-grandma coming here from Haiti, which had nothing to do with anything.
Why should they know why they're there now any more than they did 2 years ago? Okay. So you can't report on life winning. You can't report on the disparate crowd sizes of the March for Life versus the PHATs. So you take some video of Catholic schoolboys confronting, or as it turns out, to borrow from Paul Harvey, and now you know the rest of the story, being confronted by leftist protesters while waiting for their bus after having participated in the March for Life. And you turn this into a international story of young people who are Catholic,
who are privileged,
or Christian, or pro-life, wearing MAGA hats. That is necessarily the modern-day Ku Klux Klan. And that's what the story has become.
Well, it's this group of black Hebrew Israelites. Have you ever heard of them? They're very vile, and they were shouting things at those kids.
Yes, the Black Hebrews is the name of the organization, and this is how it actually started before you got to the Native Americans, Nathan Phillips and his friend. This is what the Black Hebrews, this is their name, were shouting at the kids waiting for their bus.
Because I know y'all a little younger than me. So let me show y'all something. Stay back. Go on YouTube, right? And y'all can look it up for yourself. Check this out.
Probably gonna do that.
I'm going to give y'all something. Check this out. Go on YouTube and look up Donald Trump kisses drag. You're going to see your president kiss Rudy Giuliani dressed in a drag on the lips. Your president is a homosexual. I got news for you. That's homophobic. Your president is a homosexual. You make us swear on the Bible. You got on the back of the court system, "In God we trust." On the back of your dollar bill, it says, "In God we trust." But you give rights. The Bible condemns homosexuality, man.
They're still
So
humans.
guess what? Read that again, Baba Kushar.
I will set him against a hypocritical nation.
A hypocritical nation. You make us swear on the Bible, but you judge us by your penal code system. You don't judge us by the law of God.
So you had hysterics, you had anti-gay epithets, you had profanity.
And they're calling him cracker. They're saying, "This, you guys are the results of incest." I mean, they were relentless. It was about 6 guys, the Black Hebrew group, yelling at these kids.
Here's the statement from Nick Sandman, who is the kid who was nose to nose with Nathan Phillips, the Native American, about how this all went down. When we arrived, we noticed 4 African-American protesters who were also on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial. I'm not sure what they were protesting. I did not interact with them. I did hear them direct derogatory insults at our school group. They said hateful things, racist, bigots, white crackers, the F word for gay people, racial epithet, incest kids. They also taunted an African-American student from my school by telling him that we would harvest his organs. I had no idea what that insult means, but it was startling to hear. So they asked for permission, according to Sandman, from their chaperones to start their school chants to drown out the Black Hebrew protesters.
Yeah. And if you watch the entire video, you can see in that everyone's dancing, and
then these other Native Americans, Nathan Phillips and a couple of his friends, come over, beating his drum, and walk up to Nick Sandeman. So says Nick Sandeman. We hadn't previously noticed them. They approached our group. They had drums and were accompanied by at least one person with a camera. Began to play his drum as he waded into the crowd, which parted for him. I didn't see anyone try to block his path. He locked eyes with me, approached me, coming with inches in my face. He played his drum the entire time he was in my face. I believe that by remaining motionless and calm, I was helping to diffuse the situation. I realized everyone had cameras and that perhaps a group of adults was trying to provoke a group of teenagers into a larger conflict. I said a silent prayer that the situation would not get out of hand. Well, that guy, first of all, he was misidentified as Michael Hodge first, and then Michael Hodge was receiving all the hate. Then they got the right guy, and now he and his family are receiving all of the hate, suggesting that this was, as I said before, a 21st century iteration of the Klan. And now, because only the first snippet was played, you hear students chanting and you see the nose-to-nose confrontation between this teenager and this Native American gentleman.
And it made national news because he's wearing a MAGA hat, I think. But
yes. Okay. Yeah, that's a part of it. There's no question. Yeah. But you had all these people, including like the leading lights of Catholic thought in the world, rush to judgment after seeing a snippet of the video.
They might expel him. And
now you've got, thanks to a little bit of digging, you've got people like Rod Dreyer, who wrote a great piece called Catholic Bonfire at the Stake, walking it back. Robbie George. I mean, he is one of the most important Catholic thinkers in the world. Princeton. We've been on the show many times. I apologize to the Covington Catholic boys. They're from Covington, Kentucky, if I didn't mention. What Rod Dreyer says of himself, rush to judgment, goes double for me. I jumped the gun, and that was stupid and unjust. It is not the boy. It is I, not the boys, who need to take a lesson from this. For more on this topic and others, we're pleased to be joined by Rich Lowry. He's the editor of National Review, Fox News contributor, author of the book Lincoln Unbound. Rich, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having me.
What about this sort of news cycle on this incident over the weekend? And, despite all we talk about and all we document with respect to misreporting and unaccountability from D.C. press corps outlets, we see a video snippet, and a lot of our better thinkers the world over go right for the left's narrative about these kids.
Yeah, well, I got to do a mea culpa myself. Saturday night, I tweeted that the apology from the school was necessary and appropriate, and I actually tried to do some due diligence. Anytime there are videos involved and there are tweets characterizing videos, you want to look for yourself. Mm-hmm. And I thought I had, and I thought that the school apologizing kind of must have meant it's pretty solid. And then immediately people tweeted at me with a video that was from a different angle that showed, it was still just a snippet, and showed the activist / elder, whatever you want to call him, approaching the kid with the MAGA hat, which obviously immediately puts a different spin on that particular aspect of it. Mm-hmm. But it still wasn't clear and I didn't see until yesterday the entire video where, the context of this thing was if you think the kids have mobbed the elder / activist and begun mocking him, it looks horrible. If you realize actually the kids were already chanting and high-spirited and jumping around, and for some reason this guy intrudes into the middle of them, and they begin jumping with him, probably good-naturedly. It's a little hard to tell 100%. And he immediately gets in the face of this kid. It's totally different. So, I'm with Robbie George. I had a mea culpa. I deleted the tweet. And it's just a lesson that's really hard to learn in the social media era when everything moves so quickly that you just got to wait and hear from all sides.
But I think we all have to admit this wouldn't even be a story had he not had a MAGA hat on.
No, definitely. I mean, that's what made it supercharged was the notion, and, I was never down with this, obviously, that these kids were Trump supporters, therefore they had learned hate from the president, and even though they're supposed to be at this event, which is about protecting life and love, they because they know how Trump operates, they go out of the way to bully this elderly, frail-looking man who's just beating a drum and doing a spiritual chant. So that was the larger narrative, and that's why just the level of hatred directed at these kids was off the charts.
And Ross Douthat in New York tweeted out, maybe not a good idea to wear MAGA hats to March for Life, and I get that point, but by the same token, I mean, Vice President Pence was there. President Trump provided a recorded message. President Trump is whatever he was prior to becoming president, has governed as a pro-life president, starting with the Supreme Court nominees. And so, you can understand where the intersection of being there to celebrate the notion of the sanctity of life from conception to natural death would intersect with, the politics in D.C.
Yeah, and just also, I mean, this march has thousands and thousands of people. Yeah. And it would be like, if the Women's March weren't dying on the vine, which it is, and if Hillary were president, which she isn't, it'd be like people wearing Hillary hats, if she had hats, at a women's march. So I don't think that's legitimate criticism. And it's just also this incident. Let's just assume that the worst was true and the initial interpretation was correct. This is still would have been an extremely minor incident that in the era prior to social media, no one would have known about or cared about. It would have been an act of rudeness that lasted 10 minutes, and the country wouldn't have known, and things would have been fine. But in the era of social media, just everything is magnified. So these kids who are just waiting there for their bus and to meet the adults in their group and are being harangued by these crazy black Hebrews. There's a group of them in New York you'll see occasionally too, and all you can do is just sort of gawk and walk away. But you're 16-year-old, you've never seen from Tennessee, you've never seen something like this. You're being called these terrible things by these crazy people, and then all of a sudden you're just like a national sensation, and all you've done is just like 5 minutes of your life all of a sudden are magnified, and people want to destroy you on the basis of it. So social media is very powerful. We all use it. Even and it doesn't matter how much I complain about Twitter. I'm always on Twitter just to see what the latest thing is. Yeah. But it's obviously, in some important ways, made our public life so much worse.
I want to go back to the P-Hat marches. Johnny Walker, the Jane Walker edition on their website. To celebrate the many achievements of women and the shared journey towards progress and gender equality, we proudly introduced Jane Walker in 2018. A special edition offering of our award-winning Black Label blend. That's the Jane Walker icon featured on it. And this is in support of the Women's March, the P-Hat March, as I call it, that took place over the weekend as well. So the anti-Semitism exhibited by the Women's March organizers, Tamika Mallory, Linda Sarsour. Too much for AFL-CIO, too much for the DNC, too much for the Southern Poverty Law Center. They all pulled out. Not too much for Johnny Walker. It's sort of a remarkable moment for me, recognizing that I think today that it is corporate cultural Marxists who represent a greater threat to our liberty than your officious government commissar. And I wanted to get your take on that.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen it again and again. Just going back a couple of years ago when there were these religious freedom protection laws considered at the state level, Indiana most prominently, and it wasn't Democrats, it wasn't the media that took it down. It was corporations just getting on board a woke agenda. So this is one of the foremost challenges to the right, going forward, that the corporate world is on the other side. And I will say, just to strike a positive note here, the reporting by a couple outlets on the anti-Semitism of these key organizers of the Women's March was fantastic.
Yeah.
It was not an easy story to write because in certain circles it wasn't welcome. And I have to hail these various groups, all of which I disagree with and fight with on an almost daily basis, and a lot of prominent Democrats for pulling out. So hopefully this event is going to be dead next year, and something better will rise up to take its place.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even think they had a common group message. They were talking about the shutdown. They were all over the place.
Yeah, and it took, I just praise the press, but it took a while for this really the story to catch on, and just the disparity between like the instant reaction against like a Steve King, and how long it takes to try to get people's attention focused on anti-Semites on the left is a really big disparity.
I wanted to also get your take, since National Review has opined against the president using emergency powers to fund border security, fund the border barrier. After his carrot was rejected over the weekend, what do you think Trump should use as a stick to try and get to a deal?
I mean, it's really hard. I mean, I think the offer is the correct thing to do, and I think you should keep offering. The problem is you get into a situation where you're negotiating with yourself. But at this point, Trump wants a negotiation, and Nancy Pelosi wants a humiliation. She wants to completely just crush him and give him zero. And I got to think eventually some Senate Democrats will shake loose. As this thing drags on, as it becomes a little more painful and real to people, and then you'll get some sort of compromise. But I fear it's going to be far short of what the president would have wanted. And just one of my regrets here is his initial budget request was for $1.6 billion for fence funding, and the Senate was going to give him that. And then at the last minute, he decided, well, I need 5.7. But if he'd asked for 5.7 at the beginning, might not have gotten 5.7, but he would have gotten a lot more than 1.6. So I fear that he kind of stumbled into this without a lot of forethought, and that that's probably not going to end well.
He is Rich Lowry, editor of National Review, nationalreview.com, Fox News contributor, author of Lincoln Unbound. Rich, thanks as always for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks so much, guys.
Take care.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Connect with Dan and Amy using the AM 560 mobile app. Download it today at 560theanswer.com/mobile.